Well, hello, friends, and howdy, gang. Sonia, how you doing this week?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Ah, living the dream. Landon,
Look, she's trying to hold back so
I
bad.
know she is. She has those big, pretty teeth, and she can just smile and like fake. She's like holding it all back there. Landon, how are you doing this lovely week?
I'm good, man. Just tired.
Yeah, I
You know,
think we all are. Full disclosure to the audience: two thirds of the people on this show right now are very tired, and the only one smiling is not. She's
I'm
fucking.
alive.
I don't know. She must have took a bunch of cocaine before the show. She's all hopped up.
Snoring.
She's doing lines in the bathroom. But so we're all real tired. But we do have a doozy of a show for you. It's gonna be a short one. Gonna be short and not so sweet because child death is not sweet. But JonBenét Ramsey. So like were you guys when you saw that this was the show, were you guys like sort of excited? Like this is something that happened when you were both young people. You probably
Yeah.
remember on the news like seeing
No, I didn't. I didn't really
it's because
watch
you were in
news.
fucking
You would have been
Ethiopia or whatever.
1 year older than me at the time.
Yeah. So you would have been 7. So you were as old when she died as I was when Chris Benoit died
Right.
from several episodes back.
You get a way to tie it together.
It's crazy to me that I'd like to point out she would be 32.
Yep.
Like she'd be 32 right now if she had lived. But do you guys want to get right into it?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm honestly not that excited about this one. I don't like talking about.
Yeah,
Kids
the kids in the mainstream. I know. You wish it was like all underground. The thing about the kids, though, like there's so many prolific cases. Like at some point, I'm sure we'll talk about Boy in the Box.
Oh, yeah.
Like there are so many with kids, because when there are kids involved in the story, of course it goes from being a local story to being national to being international.
Right.
And I think this story was like, obviously I was not alive yet. I was still in my father's nut, as they say. But like, I mean, I feel like this was like the story of that time period, right? So let's get right into the business here. So December 26th, 1996, Patty Ramsey, who is the mother, finds a ransom note inside of the house. Now we have to stop immediately here.
Where did she find it in the house?
It was so they had a back staircase. I picture this house as like the house from the fucking show The Nanny. Does anyone else remember The Nanny
Yes.
with Fran Drescher? Really, Landon? You don't know? Oh, it's such a great
That
show.
was a good show.
No, I have no idea what that is.
Really?
It was a sitcom.
Oh, it was such a
Well,
good.
there you go.
Oh, but it was so funny. It was
it was
good. It was good.
Yeah.
Fran
like
Drescher's
Golden Girls is probably about the best sitcom out there. And then
but I'll tell you, it's up there. It's about as funny.
Yeah.
I like the Golden Girls a lot. It's one of my guilty pleasures, as us straight men say when we like those things. But like, no, it was a good one. I think you'd enjoy it.
Watch it.
So she found this.
I'll keep it fun.
She found this ransom note on the back stairs of like in their house. It was in the house. And furthermore, right, they would later learn that the paper and pen were both also from inside the house. So whoever wrote this ransom note
There's
allegedly
fingerprints on it.
would have broken into the house, written the note, and then did whatever they did to young JonBenét.
Or they would have already been in the house and not had to break in.
And that's an interesting thing where like people are like, oh, it's like what is that? When a stranger calls, the call is coming from inside the house. And Black Christmas is the same way. You ever see Black Christmas, Landon? I feel like that's a Landon movie.
I don't know. That sounds familiar, but
Black Christmas was like the first slasher horror movie. It was before Halloween.
I'm gonna look it up, and if I see the picture, I'll probably.
I think you'd know it. So once again, right, the only people that were in the home were the father, whose name is John, the mother whose name is Patsy, and the brother whose name is Burke. Okay. So they call the police because even though the letter said, if you call the police, we're going to kill your daughter, Patsy, the first thing she did was call the police. And because they thought they were dealing with a kidnapping, right? The police didn't search the house. Well, that would turn out to be a fatal flaw, right? And we'll get into why in a little bit here. But like all day, right? People are just walking around the house. They're just like fucking walking around. In 8 hours' time, they find the body of JonBenét still in the house.
I
But
think one
she's
of the detectives told the father to look around.
yeah. So basically, they when they did find her, and the father is the one who found her. He found her in the basement in like a side room, and basically they were like, "Well, this is fucked up because this whole crime scene's contaminated. Like the house is the crime scene; it's all contaminated, so we can do nothing." Um, and look, you know, they found her. She had been strangled with a cord, and you know she was just left there. And the ransom note. See, this is where there's like there's all sorts of theories about who done it, right? Because the ransom note simply says, "Hey, we want I think it was $100,000 in exchange for your daughter. If you call the police, your daughter dies." Now, the thing that's interesting about $100,000 is around this same time, John had gotten a bonus for about that much at work.
So it's
So
most likely someone that knows them.
it's someone who was in the know to some degree, okay, or it was a cover up, which we'll get into all of that here in a little bit as well. um there was there was a man's DNA found on JonBenét's clothing. However, it's not as creepy as it may sound. It was no dirty stuff. But the DNA did not hit any of it didn't hit the FBI, the CIA, none of these databases. So whoever this person was, they were a ghost. Now, the explanation that would later be given is that whoever the individual was who had packaged this clothing, their DNA could have very well been the DNA that was there. And apparently that happens a lot more often than people think. So yeah, that's sort of how that was explained away. There were two strange, different sets of footprints outside in the snow. There was also a rope that did not belong to the Ramseys. Of course, this would in some people's mind, right? I don't know if they ever announced what the murder weapon was, if it was the rope or if it was a cord from like a phone or something. That's important later, which we'll get into that with one of the suspects. But yeah, so she was strangled. Shades of BTK, or our first show, for those of you who remember. So the note was said to have been written by a small group of people. All right, and basically they were sort of like the way that the letter was addressed is that it was written by a small group of people. It was meant for Mr. Ramsey. They would urge him that if he went to the police, they would behead his daughter. This did not happen. They did not behead her. And the letter was signed SBTC, and no one knows what that means. We still have no fucking clue what that means. As I said before, right, the pen and paper used for this note came from inside of the house. It seems like whoever did this knew about this bonus, and so a lot of people immediately assumed, right, it was one of the Ramseys themselves. Most people believing that it was either Patsy the mother or it was Burke the son, and the parents were just covering for him. So the first thing that investigators had done is try to like test their handwriting. And what they were able to decide is that Mr. Ramsey, John Ramsey, was definitely not the person who wrote the note. He was definitely not the person. Mrs. Ramsey's results came out inconclusive.
Really?
So Patsy, they couldn't prove nor disprove that she wrote the note. And of course, Burke did not write the note, but a lot of people do believe that he was the killer. However, whoever the killer was would have had to have staged the attack. Because of course they did describe, like, in the note, right? So the attack had to have been staged in some way. So that's why a lot of people do rule out the family themselves. And of course, also the DNA didn't match, which is an interesting thing, though, because when you're dealing with like people in the same household, like Landon, if I killed you, right? Let's say we live together and I killed you. My DNA is all over the place.
Right.
It's where I live.
You having a scapegoat.
So like I don't know. Maybe
I'm curious why she had to be killed with a rope. If you're 8 years old, why would you need a rope? 7 years old?
Choker.
Why would you need why would you need a rope? Like, almost to me, when I think of that, that's like taking one step back from being, connected to the killing, if you will. You see what I'm saying? If you did it with your hands, it's a little bit more it's a little bit more
it's impersonable. So
Right.
Here's the thing. A criminal profiler would most likely tell you that the reason they used a rope is because they didn't want to look her in the eyes, because they didn't want to have that personal moment of reflection, right? Whoever it was may have regretted what they were doing if they saw her facial reactions, if they, were paying attention to that. So it would seem as though the person who did this knew her in some degree.
Well, did they write it before killing her or after killing her?
They don't know. That's where it's a very interesting thing, because
if it's someone that knows her or her knowing them, then she'll see that whoever wrote it killed her, basically. So
seems to me to be like a little bit of a spur of the moment thing, if I get it right. Like, if you knew you were going to kill her, you would have already had your own paper and wrote this out.
And that goes into the whole thing. Who goes through the trouble, right? If I'm going
through the office to find a paper and pen.
If I'm
Right.
going to kidnap somebody, right, and I'm going to leave a ransom note for their family, why would I go through the trouble of going through the office, writing the note? This is all valuable time that I could be caught.
Why
Now
not
I
write
should
it prior, like before
Exactly.
getting there?
Just bring it in.
Exactly. So it's the morning, it's the day after Christmas. The note wasn't found until 5:58. That's the same time that the police were called. So like, it is early morning, and there are people who say, well, someone could have done that. My point has always been, that's a lot of work to go through. And
Right.
that's taking a lot of chances. If it is someone who isn't a part of the family, right, that's a lot of opportunity to get caught. It's almost like whoever it is wanted to get caught, and then they didn't get caught, so they went through with the murder. So in 1999, something that's interesting is that, and this, by the way, only came out recently, so this is new information. In 1999, a grand jury was going to indict the parents, but the DA didn't believe there was enough evidence. That is fucking wild. And ladies and gentlemen, that's how the judicial system benefits rich people.
Right.
Because if this was poor people, there's no fucking way the DA defends them. There's no way.
They're the first ones they go after.
There's no way that the DA defends them. But the DA said that he didn't feel like there was enough evidence to indict them. But the grand jury did. That's wild to me. I can't get over it. So let's get into the suspects that are not family members. So Bill McReynolds is the first suspect. He was at the home on December 24th, Christmas Eve. He was playing Santa. That was like his gig. And there are some weird ties that he has with this family and with this case. So, for example, his own daughter was kidnapped 22 years earlier. So that's the start of like
That's
weird
strange.
coincidences. Yeah. His wife had a play written basically the same exact like the prior to this story his wife had written a play basically of the exact same thing happening, like a person killing a girl the same exact way, rich family, ransom note. Like she had written a play that's basically a blueprint if you will. It gets worse. He said that he felt close to JonBenét because she's the only little girl that ever gave him a gift. The gift that she gave him was a little vial of glitter. He carried the glitter everywhere
Not
and
suspicious
says,
whatsoever.
he even took it into surgery with him. And he says that he wants them to be mixed with his ashes when he dies.
Jesus.
So here's the thing. That's fucking weird.
That is weird.
That's really fucking weird. But you know what's crazy? Some of the other suspects may be more weird. So, do you guys want to take a second and talk about this guy and his glitter?
Yeah, okay. Like, I don't know what to say.
Landon, are you not
Tell you
interested?
about that.
So here's the thing, right? He was gifted this glitter by JonBenét, which we don't know when he was gifted the glitter. Like he
What
could
does
have been
that mean,
gifted it.
though? The glitter means.
She just gave him glitter. She's a fucking 6-year-old, Sonia. What do you want her to give it?
But why
Yeah,
glitter
what was
to
so
a man?
significant?
What? Yeah, it was.
I think she just wanted to give Santa something, or the man who played Santa. I don't know if she knew that he was just playing Santa, or if she was like, Santa, I have something for you, and gave him glitter. Or subsequently, he could have taken said glitter as a trophy of his kill. Now, I'm not saying that that's what happened, but that seems more likely than being lifelong attached to a child who gave you glitter. And he did say like creepy shit. Like for him to say that he felt connected to her because she gave him this glitter, like that's fucking weird, you know? Just weird shit. The next individual is Greg Oliva. He was a neighbor and he was arrested on charges of having child photos. He was also arrested for drug charges in 2016. He carries a picture of JonBenét in his wallet. He says that it's a memento, that it's his way of having a monument for her. And a day after the murder of JonBenét occurred, he called a friend saying, quote, I hurt a little girl. I hurt a little girl. He had also tried at some point earlier to strangle his own mother with a cord.
Jesus.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is with all these grown-ass people,
I know.
right, that have, like, this shit, you know? It seems just fucking odd to me. I guess it is something that I haven't pointed out just because I assume everybody knows. JonBenét was like one of those beauty pageant kids. What's that? Toddlers and tiaras or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
Like her parents put her through that shit. So like she did have fans.
Public.
Well, like, I mean, she wasn't like an international figure. Like, she wasn't on a show or anything like that. But like, she was considered a model, and so like, I'm sure she was in commercials and ads, and I'm sure
I think
she
was in newspapers all the time.
Yeah,
too.
like I'm sure there was some fucking creep who was obsessed with her. You know, like that's just how this shit is. That's why I think people who force their kids into that path are fucking weirdos, man. I don't get it. I just
I
don't
would
get
not
it.
do that.
Which brings us to our last. Oh, I should point out with Gary Oliva, his DNA did not match either. And that brings us to our last suspect, who is not a family member, and that is John Mark Carr. He was a teacher, but he wasn't her teacher. Well, I don't think it was like the same school at all. I think he was actually in like a college. He would confess to a journalist via email. He had written that he was in love with JonBenét, but he hit her in the head with a flashlight. He would also flee the United States to go to Bangkok because he was facing child photo charges. His DNA also did not match. He did say that he didn't act alone, but he was in Georgia during the time the incident occurred, so he couldn't have been the person. Once again, none of these people had DNA that matched, and then, like I had mentioned earlier, there have been some scientific folks who have said that DNA could have come from whoever packaged her clothing initially. Right. And with that, I guess we'll get into the parents and the brother. So
the one detective, they did find out because the father hired a new detective because apparently the ones before they got into an argument and such. With this new one, they found a DNA on her pants from the suspect.
Yeah. Which one? The guy that I was just talking about?
It was one of the guys that they found. He went to trial.
Oh, okay. It's interesting to know.
He was on a wheelchair.
Oh, Christ. Okay, see, so the fucking guy wheeled up the staircase to fucking,
they just found out new.
Yeah, so this is the recent deal, because we're going to get to that. We're going to get to all that. Because, yes, the case has been reopened because there's a neighbor who claimed that something very similar happened with he had a ransom note and his daughter had went missing, and they feel like that could be connected. There were, thanks to modern day technology, there were different people who had evidence, DNA evidence at the crime scene, who it just shouldn't have been there. But once again, I mean, I feel like this case is unsolved, and I feel like it's going to continue to be unsolved. I feel like it's one of those things, court of public opinion, people are going to find what suspect.
Hey, we said the same thing about the Zodiac killer, and then look what happened Monday, so let's see.
Yeah, but that would be too perfect for it to.
That would be crazy.
I can't strike lightning like that. I get very lucky booking these shows that like it somehow is always topical, which is odd to me because I don't try that hard, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen. But I'll come up with a subject to do, and it just so happens to be topical. So yeah,
it works out that way.
Yeah, which is always neat. Like the Zodiac show that you're referring to. Myself and Landon back in the day when we were dipping our toes into the true crime, we had talked about the Zodiac show. It was a much less serious format, of course. And I was like, guys, let's not talk about the ciphers. It'll just take up too much time. And the next day, someone solved the cipher, and we were like, "Fuck, man! Should have been we should have." But that show did really well for us.
Did really well
after that happened. The algorithm worked for us for once.
Yeah, it picked it up somehow.
So there are people who do believe that the family did it. Most people think that the father wasn't involved, but a lot of people do think that the mother was in some way. Most people believing that the mother herself either committed the crime and wrote the note, or that her son Burke committed the crime and that she wrote the note to try to cover up for him. Burke did an interview with Dr. Phil where he said some pretty weird shit. You can go look it up. There are not a lot of people that are Team Burke. A lot of people think Burke's the fucking guy. And He very well could be. I mean, it's one of those deals. Like I said, this case is unsolved, and most likely it's going to stay that way unless we strike lightning twice. In which case, I'm heading to Vegas.
I'm with you. Let's go.
So, with that, everyone, like I said, we wanted to keep this a pretty short show. We're all pretty tired, except for Sonia because she did crack cocaine.
I want to
And,
know who you think it is.
Who do I think it is?
Yeah.
You know, I don't. I don't think I've ever done that on the show.
Who do you lean toward? Who do you
I
lean?
don't- But what I'm saying is I don't think that I always try to stay impartial.
Yeah. I know it's bullshit. So go ahead.
I don't want to. I don't want to dampen
Dylan will
anyone's.
get off the air and he will go, "Yeah, that fucking neighbor did it." He will.
Yeah.
Of course.
I'm gonna hit
Yeah.
record right now. Remember this.
Off air, I'll answer that question, but I can't do it on air. I have to be as impartial as humanly possible. But with that, everyone, final thoughts. Sonia, starting with you.
The less you give a damn to negative people, the more peaceful your life will become.
Fucking Sonia is trying to send a message to somebody. Who hurt you, Sonia? Jesus Christ.
Every week.
Every week, she's like fiery.
Look, here's my final thoughts. Are we going to do a cheery up episode anytime soon?
Yes. So I do have. Listen, it's fucking true crime. What did you people expect from this? Like, what do you think?
I'm talking about kids
Unicorns
for a
and
week.
rainbows.
So in January, we do have some. I mean, they're still depressing, but we have some cults to talk about.
Yes, I like that.
We have some culty type events, some cult adjacent activity, if you will.
Cold
We
fun.
we also have a guy whose head exploded.
Oh, is he coming on air?
That's what I
He's
thought
dead.
you were going to say.
He's dead. So his head's gone, people. What the fuck? Okay. Oh, and we will end January talking about everybody's favorite, Charles Manson.
Okay.
All right.
More
Man.
mainstream shit.
Listen, I promise you that if you how the fuck, here's the thing, right? If you can't get through the mainstream shit that's gory, how do you expect to get into the fucking deep darkness? Me and Sonia did a show about a lady who drowned babies and nobody saw it. That was one of the darkest shows we've ever done and nobody saw it, Landon. How
Nobody
do
saw
you
it.
expect? Maybe we'll do Lizzie Borden. Maybe that's more light.
Whatever, Dylan.
Also,
He's up
fucking,
this.
it's the world of true crime.
You'll
we
do
already
it.
we did BD Cooper. I mean, fuck, how many lighthearted stories are there? Fucking what? You want to talk about Bigfoot for the 8 trillionth time? How about we talk about Dogmen? Next week,
I didn't talk about Dogman,
next
but I
week
would
we'll
much
talk about
rather
Dogman.
talk about the Anunnaki because I know that's exactly
Fuck
what you want.
yourself. Give your final thoughts and shut the fuck up about these paranormal shenanigans.
Look, I think the killer is Satoshi Nakamoto. That's why the letter was signed SBTC, Satoshi Bitcoin. At the end of the day, I don't believe she's Katy Perry, but that could be also the truth. Who knows?
So random.
And of course, alluding to the fan theory that JonBenét Ramsey grew up to be Katy Perry, there are some shocking sort of connections and resemblances there, but that's for another time. This will be our last show until the new year, so the next time we see you folks, I will have aged one numeric, the big 2-3. Woo!
Yay! You're gonna do a birthday show?
We wish you we wish you all a happy holiday of choice, and yeah, don't eat the yellow snow.